They all told stories completely unlike anything that the big companies were doing at the time. And that led on into Swamp Thing, which is probably the first mainstream book that really attracted that sort of a buzz. It seemed to catch on, and you were into then Watchmen and Dark Knight and the way right on to today with all the Vertigo titles. People argued for literally years about what this was all to be referred to as. When a rating system was first introduced or first mentioned by DC, all the creators were up in arms. DC wanted to put a label on Swamp Thing to differentiate it from the ordinary regular comic books that they did. And Alan Moore threw up his hands. He wasn't going to have any of this. He didn't feel that comics should have any classification. He said novels don't. So why should comics? I think they compromised. They put sophisticated suspense at the top of the cover of the Swamp Thing comic to try and give some idea that this just wasn't another run-of-the-mill comic of the time.
So any kids who couldn't understand what sophisticated meant, they shouldn't be reading.
They shouldn't be reading it. But eventually that metamorphed into the Vertigo line. Vertigo wasn't an immediate success, and the initial Vertigo books that were published really didn't do that very well. Sandman was about the only Vertigo book that really was a success. And for most of the 90s, there really wasn't a lot, apart from superhero books, that the main companies were publishing. But in the last, I think since Preacher hit, Preacher possibly maybe set the tone more for what has followed, maybe than was acknowledged at the time. Preacher started off really in the late 90s. At that time, Sandman had been the big Vertigo book, and it was nearing the end of its run. And Preacher came out really at just the right time. People were looking for the next quality book. And Preacher came along. It was really the complete antithesis of Sandman. And Gareth Ennis told a storyline that just hooked people from the very beginning. And it really became a roller coaster ride with just incredible characters, incredible events. And he really, for that time, it pushed things quite considerably. He has gone on to do much more extreme work, but for its time, Preacher was pretty hard-edged stuff.